And we have that breaking news for you now. Axios, specifically Mark Caputo and Alex Thompson, the reporters at Axios, have just obtained the audio tapes from October 2023 containing former President Joe Biden's interviews with special counsel Robert Hur in his investigation into President Biden's mishandling of classified information. These are the very interviews that largely were responsible for Hur to release the 2024 report saying that while he believed Biden mishandled classified documents, he did not think a jury would convict him because the president came across as, quote, a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory, a quote that caused the White House to explode with fury. Let's get right to CNN's Evan Perez. Evan, we are currently ingesting the audio tape, which just only broke a few minutes ago. What is the importance of these tapes? Merrick Garland blocked them from being released, and Pam Bondi, the new Attorney General, has released them.
Yeah, we've been anticipating this, Jake, because, look, we've all wanted to hear what the president sounded like, because we know what Robert Hur described. We've, I've reviewed hundreds of pages of the transcripts of those interviews that were done over 2 days, during the time when Robert Hur was doing this investigation. And when you look at the pages, right, you look at the transcript, you come away with the idea that, the president was absolutely had a foggy memory. He didn't remember key things. Obviously, there was the one thing that really annoyed him, which was this question of whether he remembered when his son, Beau, died, right? That has been one of the big points of contention. And so we at CNN, one of the things we did was we sued to obtain this audio because we wanted to hear what the president sounded like so that we could then make a decision on our own from hearing, to see whether Rob Hur described the president's state of mind very, 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 accurately. And so it's very interesting, and we want to hear what the president sounded like. And we should note that the president himself asserted executive privilege, which is what led the Attorney General to refuse to release the audio. And so obviously now the President of the United States has decided that it is okay. President Trump has decided that it is okay for this to be heard, and that is why the Justice Department and Attorney General Pam Bondi have now released this. So again, we haven't heard this ourselves. Axios has now released this audio, but it's important, Jake, for us to know exactly how the president sounded in those interviews, and how and why Robert Hur made those conclusions. Yeah,
and one of the things that's very clear if you read the transcripts is that President Biden really was having significant trouble with dates. We're ingesting the audio from Axios as we speak. We just got a soundbite. Let's listen.
Trump gets elected in November of 2017? 2016. All right. So 2017.
That's when you left office, January of 2017.
Okay. But that's when Trump gets sworn in.
Right.
January.
Right. Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
There's another section that we're going to ingest in a second as well, when he's asked about when he moved from the vice president's residence to this Virginia facility in 2017. And he says, this is 2017, 2018, and Robert Hur says yes. And President Biden says, remember, in this time frame, my son has either been deployed or is dying. He's the one that brings up Beau Biden.
Right.
Beau Biden actually deployed, I think, around 2007, 2008. Beau Biden died in 2015. He's the one that has a complete lack of grasp of dates.
Right, exactly. And you can hear a whisper from one of his attorneys who's in the room when those interviews are being done. Again, we've seen the transcript. You and I have read the transcript. What we haven't heard is the sound of the president's voice. And again, what was key for the prosecutors to decide that if you put him on the stand to answer questions about this, if they decided to bring charges against him, how would jurors perceive this, especially, in a couple of years, right? Again, from the time of this interview. And that's the reason why Robert Hur made those conclusions about the president, what they thought the president's state of mind was, or how he would present if they were to put him before a jury. Again, it's very important for us to hear the president's voice and to hear exactly the way he kind of loses himself in those interviews. There's another key part of this, Jake, that I think is interesting is you can hear in those interviews, the banter he's trying to exchange with prosecutors, in that sort of Joe Biden way, right? And you can see where he loses himself as he's trying to tell these stories or trying to recollect of how those classified documents came to be in his garage and in his office where they were found and why that investigation began.
So one of the other things that's important here, this is October 2023, and President Biden's deterioration is really starting strong this year. He had been deteriorating bit by bit, but in 2023, it got really bad, according to top aides and people close to the president that we spoke with for our book. The failure of the plea agreement for Hunter, his son Hunter, in the summer of 2023 was part of that. It really stressed him out and upset him so much because Hunter was talking about what this would do to him and how the Republicans were trying to drive him to relapse and drive him to commit suicide. And President Biden, and I say this sympathetically, who had already lost 2 children and a wife, wife and a child in 1972 in a car accident, and then his son Beau in 2015. President Biden legitimately had fear that his son Hunter was going to take his own life or overdose, and he was worried about losing a 3rd child. This is when the deterioration really starts. Right. And this is when the administration starts really sequestering him off from other people in the administration.
The other thing...
Well, I'm sorry, I want to come to you, but the Biden spokesperson just put out the statement, quote, "The transcripts were released by the Biden administration more than a year ago. The audio does nothing but confirm what is already public." Okay, I mean, nice try. You guys kept this from being released publicly. Right. If it really was not a big deal, then you would have released it publicly.
They did not want this to come out before the election. That, let's be honest, that's the reason why this happened. And look, one of the other things that I think is key to understanding this during this interview, the context, right, is that you remember this. He sat down for these interviews in October of right after the attack by Hamas in Israel, and so he had spent that entire time, obviously, on the phone and working long hours. And so the big question, of course, became that, a president of his age and given what the stresses of what he was going through, should he have sat down? Should that have been the time for him to sit down for several hours of interviews? And they do go over 2 days of interviews with prosecutors with everything that they had on the line. Clearly, Joe Biden thought that it was fine to do that. But clearly, you can see from some of his answers that he does not have a handle on some of this. And so you could say, was it because of fatigue? Or is it because of the things that you write about in your book, Jake? And so that's the big takeaway, a big question that people will take away from listening to this audio.
Yeah, and the other thing that's, I think, very important about the release of this audio is the fact that because the White House... I'm told we have another soundbite. Let's play this. This is also from her audio tapes, October 2023.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is what, 2017, 18, that area?
Yes, sir.
Remember, in this time frame, my son is either been deployed or is dying. And so it was, and by the way, there were still a lot of people at the time when I got out of the Senate that were encouraging me to run in this period.
So that's what the part that I was talking about. He's not clear of dates. He's not clear on when Beau died, when Donald Trump won the presidency, when he lived in Virginia. And this is what Robert Hur heard, and why it was so significant is so few people were able to have access to President Biden like this for hours at a time when he was showing this less than optimally functioning Joe Biden. He would lose himself in trains of thought, stories that would meander and go on for 10 minutes. Forgetting names. There's twice in this one interview, he can't come up with the word fax machine. Somebody tells him once, and then like a few minutes later, he again is not able to come up with the word fax machine. And Robert Hur gets this view that so few people are getting, and then he tells the world what he saw in February 2024. And honestly, the world is never the same.
And you remember the White House pushed the Justice Department to remove those parts from Robert Hur's report, and they refused because they had heard some of this, and they knew that it was accurate what the special counsel had found, Jake.
Yeah, and they went to war with Robert Hur, the special counsel, who had difficulty finding work for months because of the kibosh put out by the White House. And against their own Attorney General, Merrick Garland. They leaked to Politico that Garland wouldn't be invited back for a second Biden administration, basically firing him, end date to come later.